You are now chopping it up with the Nerd Barbershop Podcast.
Thank you.
Welcome to a brand new episode of the Nerd Barbershop Podcast. Of course, I'm Terrence Williams. Thank you so much for checking out this brand new episode, hanging out with me for a little bit. So in this episode, I'm going to be talking about one of my actually favorite shows of 2022. Was a surprise hit, a surprise favorite show of mine. I honestly was not expecting to really enjoy this show as much as I did going into it. So I can tell about the episode of this podcast. We're going to be talking about The Bear on FX. You can stream season 1 right now on Hulu. Hulu is not paying me for this podcast, but if they wanted to, they definitely could. So just a little bit about The Bear. The Bear, of course, it came out during the summer, I believe, on FX. I remember seeing the little ads for it and stuff like that on my Google TV. And I was like, what is this show? Like, I've never seen it, never heard of it, didn't hear much about it. But watching stuff on Hulu, I started seeing commercials for The Bear. So, okay, I'll check it out. And I was doing I think I saw a little article about it. It's talking about, it's about a restaurant in Chicago. Oh, okay, that's kind of cool. And it's kind of, he's a James Beard Warning chef in the show. He takes over his late brother's restaurant, and chaos kind of ensues. So that's kind of the synopsis of the show for the most part. But The Bear does take place at a place. I think it's called This Famous Beef, I believe is what the restaurant's called. I think it's called like The Famous Beef somewhere. But the restaurant, quote unquote, is in River North, which is Chicago, north of the river in Chicago, which is really cool. I actually used to work in River North, so that made me. One thing about the show I really, really liked, it made me feel at home. Like the restaurant of the show being in River North. I used to work in River North personally. Being in Chicago, you get to see like the pink line, which you don't see the pink line a lot in shows based in Chicago. One of the characters, Sydney, she actually takes the pink line to get home, which made me feel really. That hit me right in the heart. Cause I take the pink line everywhere. It's the closest train station to my house, so I take the pink line a lot. So that was really kind of near and dear to me. It felt like me. Like this was like a show that you could almost I related to so much. So in the show The Bear, we focus on Carmi, aka his real name is Carmine, but Carmi is his nickname. And again, like I kind of said earlier, he's a James Beard Award winning chef, won all these awards and things like that. But his brother, tragically passes away. His brother leaves the restaurant to Carmi in the will. Carmi decides to take up the restaurant. He wants to upscale the restaurant. He wants to make the restaurant better. Just improve on all the recipes, improve on how it functions, makes it more efficient and things like that. Also, before I get any further into this episode of the podcast, spoiler alert, I will be talking about there will be spoilers. So if you don't want any spoilers, please do not watch or do not listen any further. If you already watched the show, you can listen further. But if you haven't, please pause the episode, watch season 1 and come back. I'll make sure to put spoiler alert in the title and in the tags and stuff like that. So spoiler alert, please do not be spoiled. Because I will be talking about a lot of the key points of the show. So we meet Carmi first, and again, he comes from Michelin star restaurants, James Beard Award winning restaurants, very fancy, like highly fancy, super, kind of pristine, and there's orders and just like French restaurants and things like that, like how everything happens, everything's very organized, very crisp, and very machine-like. That's what he's used to. But the beef in Chicago is very very casual, super family friendly. It's not family friendly, but it's very relaxed in a way. And so it's him trying to establish, a more organized, efficient manner to the restaurant, and he gets a lot of backlash from some of the other chefs. So you meet Richie, who's his cousin, quote unquote. They're not really cousins, but it's kind of like that family. We have really good friends. They're like family. You call them cousins just because. So you meet Richie, who's cousin, quote unquote. Marcus, he is the bread maker for them, but then he becomes a pastry chef because they end up realizing they should outsource the bread because the bread they make at the restaurant doesn't quite hold the sandwich properly. They don't want the texture. So Marcus goes from bread making to being the pastry chef, and he kind of has his own sub story that happens. You have Tina, who is like the class. She's been there since the get go, veteran line cook. She gives a lot of sass, a lot of personality, and the newest character and kind of newest addition to the restaurant that we meet is Sydney. And Sydney comes in. She's very young. She's very passionate, very ambitious, and she really likes Carmi. She follows his career. She knows who he is, and she wants to work at that restaurant to work with him because she wants to make herself better. But in Sydney and Tina, they butt heads throughout the entire first season, like constant. Like Sydney's trying to tell Tina do things a certain way, trying to kind of help encourage her, and Tina's like giving her lip, kind of telling her like to f off and do all this stuff and not really listening. But by the end of season one, Tina respects Sydney. And it's a really cool dynamic that kind of happens towards the end, which I can relate to in my own personal life with dealing with restaurants and stuff like that, where that happens, where you come in, maybe you're kind of come in, you're kind of like the young gun, and you're just like, you're really good, but all the veteran people that have been there, like, oh, they kind of think you're kind of stuck up if you do things a certain way, but then you just kind of have to earn their respect. And usually it takes one shift, like there's usually one shift where you do something like either we're backed up and you just kind of hold your own, and they kind of go, okay, you're legit, we respect you, like, and that happens. So yeah, it's really, so I love the cast. I think they did a great job of casting because it feels like a restaurant I would work in. Because they have a very good family atmosphere. Like, yeah, they talk shit and they give each other shit and stuff happens and they all have their own personal demons and stuff that they're trying to come to. But the restaurant just feels kind of very homey. And there's a lot of great moments in the first season. Like, I'm not gonna touch on maybe all. I think it's 8 episodes, I believe. Yeah. First season 8 episodes. I'm not gonna go into all the 8 episodes and tell you break down every single episode, but I'll probably hit stuff from each one. Because like one of the first things you meet with with Cartman, because like he calls everybody chef. It's just out of respect. Just he calls everyone chef, the dishwashers, the cashier. He calls everybody chefs. It's kind of a way to unify everybody and give everybody so everybody's at the same level of respect, which is really cool. It's really fun that they pick on him a lot for it, but they kind of come around to it. But one of the things that happens, like he has a knife. He has like a Japanese steel knife. Those knives are like $2,000, $3,000 easy. He can't find his knife, and he's looking for it. He's looking for it. And his knife is like underneath, like it's on the floor underneath a counter, like underneath like the sink or something. You can see his face, like his eyes just kind of break because that's like because they don't. That's just, like, it's just a knife. It's whatever. That knife is so expensive and it's so sharp. You can see his heart just kind of break. Just seeing his highly expensive knife, his super sharp knife, just treated like whatever is underneath the sink. And you can see his heart break. That broke my heart because I want one of those knives personally as well. And it was just like that. You could just feel it. I say, like, I know, so when I was talking about the show on Facebook, a lot of people, I was telling people, if you worked in a restaurant, it will give you PTSD. There's moments in that show that I had because I lived through some of those moments, and man, I could just tell you, like, PTSD. There's one moment. So I really love the show. Like the show gets like a 9 out of 10, 9.5 out of 10. There's just certain moments I didn't really like because I wish they would continue forward with a story, like, or they would like kind of just give you a little bit more, because a lot of times how the show would start, you get a little bit more of their personal life, just a little bit, not a whole lot. Most of the shows take place at the restaurant, which I really appreciate it. So but there's like you would get like these little teases about a dinner rush or a tease about an event, and they won't really show the event. They will kind of skip ahead and go past it, because there's one point where they're prepping for a bar crawl in River North, which I've done. I've done a few bar crawls in River North now, and just them prepping them, like getting prepped for it. But then you don't get to see the actual bar crawl happening. I was like, oh, I wish they showed. I wish they showed that chaoticness that can happen at a bar crawl, and just that sense like you're on fire for as long, because usually the bar crawls are usually a couple hours. They're not super super long, but you have like people coming in for the bar crawl. You have your normal everyday customers coming in, and if you have like Uber Eats or Grubhub stuff, you have those orders going in, like those orders coming in as well. It could be nuts. So I really wish they would have showed that. So hopefully in season two, because the show did get picked up for season two, it did like critically acclaimed. People loved it. Like Vanity Fair covered it. Like all these different places covered the show. FX did pick it up for season two, so there will be a season two, which I'm very, 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 very excited about. But I hope they just kind of add a little bit more to the restaurant, just a little bit more of those moments of, they had a moment where they ran out of chicken, I think, and they were trying to figure out what was it, chicken or was it beef? It was one, they ran out of something, and they were trying to figure out how to make it, how to stretch it, and how to make it work. And they kind of skipped ahead a little bit, but they didn't show what they did. Like, I need those moments. Like, I need that, because that's stuff that really, really happens. And that stress is just like, it sucks. But I was watching the show, and I'm like, yep, been there, been there, been there, been there, been there. Like, it's just wild. Just like one thing that happened with Sydney, because I think she studied at the Color Institute of America. I think she studied at, and Yeah, I think it was CIA. I think she studied at CIA. And so, what happens is like she gets these ideas when she's asleep. She gets ideas for recipes and ideas for things that she's working on. And she like writes them down at night, which made me laugh because me personally, I don't necessarily be asleep, but like when you're laying down, you're falling asleep. Usually, I get recipe ideas in that state of mind where you're kind of like in that lucid, where you don't really want to wake up, but you're not really asleep yet. You're kind of like in between those two stages. I get so many ideas for recipes and food stuff, and just like, ooh, I need to make that, or ooh, I should try that, or ooh, what if I add that to that? And I do she writes it down at night. I don't write my ideas at night, but a lot of times when I wake up the next day, it's still fresh in my mind. So I was like, oh man, like, I do that too. And then you have moments where Carmi, because he ends up going to like an AA meeting to help with his smoking and I think his dreams, just to help him deal with some stuff because the death of his brother was really, really intense for them because his brother actually committed suicide. His brother's actually played by John Bernthal. His brother's name is Mikey. He actually commits suicide by shooting himself in the head. And that really affected Carmi, affected their sister their sister Sugar. It just affected, everything, and he just really had a hard time dealing with it. There's also a part where you go back in time to when he was at a James Beard award winning kitchen, his old kitchen before he took over the beef, and his chef is just yelling at him like, "Oh, you're stupid. You're no good. Oh, this is terrible. You know you're terrible, right? Oh yeah, you suck. What's that smell in your hair? Ugh, it smells like cigarette. You smoke cigarettes? You're a dog." Like him just berated him. And Carmen's like, yes chef, I know chef. Like him just it was like my brain was like, oh man, that's crazy. Like it was just insane, but that's the life that some people have, and it happens, And so this is all stuff they deal with. Like there's a moment where Carmi had this nightmare of him burning his kitchen, I think, and there's later on in the episode that actually happened where he's watching something on the stove, and he just kind of gets teleported. His mind just goes, and the pot catches on fire, and the kitchen, or not the whole kitchen, but like the stove starts catching on fire, and everybody comes and they spray it out. They're like, "Are you good?" He's like, "Yeah, yeah." I'm like, it's just that kind of that anxiety that comes with it, and it was like it's really good. Like, there's a lot of little stories, like the relationship between Carmi and Richie, the relationship between Sydney and Richie, because they kind of get into it here and there. The relationship between Tina and Richie, between Tina and Richie, because they were really close, because they were there when Mikey, ran the shop or ran the restaurant. The relationship between Sydney and Tina, the relationship between Marcus and Carmi, the relationship between Marcus and Sydney. Like there's a lot of really cool functionality and really cool, like, just because they're people. Because I think what the show really does is really establishes them as people that work together, that are co-workers, that things happen. Like, and then because like one of the biggest things that happened in the show was they were setting up where Sydney kind of talked Carmi into doing Grubhub. They're doing like a um Grubhub or Uber or something, and then so Sydney was in charge of setting it up. So it's like cool, and so they're getting ready. They're getting ready to open, setting up everything, and Carmi's like, okay, cool. Sydney, cut it on. She cuts it on, and there's already orders coming in. There's like 50, 60 orders already coming in for beefs, for chicken, for pieces of cake, for like their menu, because she forgot to turn off the pre-order setting. She forgot to cut it off. So it's been on, I guess, all day or all night. People have been putting in their orders, and they were swamped. Like, it was chaos. It was mad. Like, Carmi started to lose it. Like, Carmi was just kind of like berating them, just telling them, he was like, "Hey, drop everything." And they're like, "Chef, what happened to chicken?" "Drop every fucking thing we have in the back." Like, it was insane. Like, they were just trying to do everything. People started like arguing and stuff, and Marcus was like caught up in like this donut, because he's been one of his stores that he's been working on, like the perfect donut. He couldn't quite figure it out. He finally figured it. He did it, but they're like, "Marcus, we need 20 slices of cake." He's like, "Okay, yeah, I'll get to it." And he just kind of was, like, he was just kind of in his own world, because he's so focused on this donut. And then Carmi's like, "Marcus, we need the cake. Like, we need you to start cutting cakes and get cakes together. Like, how many cakes do you have made?" And Sydney even added, he's like, "Oh, yeah, I got like 2. They're like, "2? Like, what's that?" So he just wasn't there. And so he finally gets the donut really perfect, But then, like, I think Carmi, like, slaps it out of his hand and kind of, like, gets into him. Like, hey, where you at? We need you. I don't care about that fucking donut. We need these fucking pieces of cake. And Marcus is upset. He, like, flips over some stuff. And then Sydney, like, gets into it with Richie. And Sydney accidentally stabs Richie in the ass. Hilarious. Because in the kitchen, you're supposed to always have a knife. Like, the blade of the knife should be pointed down parallel to your legs. That's how it's supposed to be. So, and you always say sharp when you're in the kitchen, so everyone knows you have something sharp. You never hold the knife like sticking up, because that's how people get stabbed. That's exactly what happened. They were getting into it. What, like, Sydney and Richie were getting into it, like talking shit to each other, just going in. And Sydney had like a little knife. Or yeah, she had the knife, and then she had it sticking out, and she walked forward a little bit into Richie, and got Richie right. No, I think she stabbed him in the leg, not the ass. It would have been funny if it was in the ass, but she stabbed him like in the thigh, cause he walked forward. She like walked forward a little bit further than she needed to, and stabbed him. Crazy, absolutely crazy, and just like it was just hectic. There was tickets coming out. Carmi's trying to figure out what's happening. Carmi and Sydney get into it because this was Sydney's responsibility, and Carmen was like, "Yo, like, hey, this is kind of on you. You didn't handle it." Like, and they were just kind of going back and forth. And Sydney walked out. She's like, "I quit. I'm done," and she walked out. And for me personally, and I'm like, because Sydney and Marcus, they talk about a little bit later in like the last episode of the season. They kind of talk about it. But I was like, and Sydney's like, oh, Carmi's a pussy, and he's a bitch, and all this. But I'm like, well, I mean, yeah, he should have handled it differently, but that was your job. You didn't do your job. You didn't cut off the pre-order, make sure no orders came in. So now orders are coming in, and they're all backed up. So she needed to take some responsibility for that. She didn't really at the end of the season, which kind of blew me, because I'm like, that's partly your fault. Now, you're a sous chef. This was your idea. You should be able to take responsibility for it. And she didn't really do that. She just kind of, she was kind of complaining about the way he treated her. But I'm like, but you let him down. Like, come on, Sydney. She does end up coming back last episode. Marcus and Carmen, they end up kind of talking it out a little bit. You don't really see it, but they do end up kind of talking it out a little bit, and they kind of come back. And then one of the biggest plot points of the entire show is they don't have any money. And Carmi's he's looking at the books trying to figure out where the fuck is the money? Like, where's stuff going? Who are these people? Like, he's trying to figure this out. And so he's trying to figure out, because, he wanted to pay Sydney. Because before Sydney joined the team officially, she did a stage. And a stage in cooking, it's French. I forget, it is French. It has a full name. It's like stagitaire or something like that. But it's a working interview in kitchens. And most kitchens use stage. You come in, you work a normal shift, usually, 5-8 hours, and you go home. Sometimes you can do more than one. Most of the times you don't get paid, but sometimes you do get paid. I personally actually did a stage at Kuma Corners some years ago, and they actually did pay me for my 5-6 hours I was there, and I did get paid. So that's what she did. So Sydney actually did a stage. She liked it. They brought her on as a sous chef, but Carmi had to figure out how to pay her. Pay her, pay the bills, get the ingredients. Like, actually in the first episode, Carmi actually sells some classic Levi's to get money to buy beef for the roast beef sandwiches. Like, it's crazy. It's wild. But so the whole episode, like, money is kind of a thing throughout the entire first season. They're trying to figure out where's the money going, what we put money into, how we get stuff fixed, and like, it was just kind of wild. But so what ends up happening is that Richie actually finds a note left from Carmi's brother Mikey in the locker room area. He sees it for Carmi, he puts it back, he doesn't give it to him. The last episode, Carmi's in the locker room, thinking, just kind of relaxed, has his head down, whatever. Richie goes back to the locker, he found the letter, pulls it out, and gives it to Carmi. And Carmi's looking like, what the fuck is this? And Richie's like, I don't know, man. Like, I don't know, cousin. Like, I don't know. He just kind of shrugged. He never read it. He just knew it was there. And Carmi's like, the fuck is this, Richie? And he's like, I don't know. Because he doesn't know. So Carmi opens it up. And so all the envelope is from Mikey. It's the recipe to the family dinner, because in restaurants, a lot of times before shifts and sometimes after shifts, but usually before shifts, after you do pre-meal and everything, you do what's called family meal. And usually you make stuff in house. Sometimes you order pizza, or sometimes you get wings and stuff like that. But it's usually just a meal where the whole staff gets together, everybody eats, kind of relax before the shift starts. You do it after the shift too. It's usually before or after the shift. So it's just, you just kind of get together and everybody eats. And when I was at the U Club, we would actually eat some of the buffet food that was from like buffets that just ended, because after they're done or whatever, there'll be a buffet. We'll push the buffet into the buffet food into another room. The staff will go into an empty room, pull down the chairs, and we all eat together. That would be our family. So yeah, the family meals, that kind of family meals in restaurants. They try all restaurants. Sometimes it doesn't happen, but it just depends on your restaurant and how it operates and things like that. So yeah, so the note that Mikey left Carmi was just for his, was like the family like spaghetti, or like his spaghetti and meat sauce recipe or something like that. I forget what it actually was. And Carmi just kind of he kind of tears up a little bit. He kind of laughs. He's like, fuck him, because that's his brother's kind of still being a dick. So Carmi decides to make it. And also another point in the series that happened was because instead of using traditional tomato cans, which are number 10 cans, like if you're in a restaurant, if you happen to see like the big old like cans of tomatoes, they're called number 10 cans. They're not 10 pounds, they're just called number 10 cans. Don't ask me why. You usually get about 8 in a case, so that's usually standard size. But for some reason at the beef, Mikey always used these really small, like these smaller tomato cans, and no one knew why. So, and Carmi never used the small ones. He just ordered a bigger one because that's kind of the standardized size for a restaurant. So it's like, okay, whatever. So he's like, I'm gonna make this recipe for family. So I'll take care of the sauce or whatever. So he's making the sauce, and he opens up a can of sauce and he's putting it in, and just a wad of cash falls out. And he does another one, a wad of cash falls out. And so then he realizes all these small ass cans of tomatoes have money in it. And it's all the money that they needed to cover all their expenses. They still didn't quite explain that, but that's what happened. So he just tells everybody, hey, open up these cans. And everybody's covered in tomato sauce. Everybody's opening cans, like getting them open. And they're just finding like tons and tons of money. And then Sydney walks in, because this is the last episode. So Sydney comes in, and she's kind of like, what's happening? And then Carmen's like, hey, chef, like, we good? And she's like, yeah, we're good. And Ricky's like, hey, Sydney, come on, throw on an apron, start cracking open these cans. And then Sydney sees all the money. And then her and Carmen have this moment where they're both talking about, like, because they talk about some of the expansions that they want, the new dining room, is just how they wanted to build it. And they're like, they start spewing out ideas. And now they have the money. And so the first season actually ends with Carmi, like, putting up a sign that says, the original beef is closing. And there's a new one that says, like, the Bear's coming soon, because the name of the new restaurant will be called The Bear, which is really cool. It's a really great show, really fun. I definitely advise you to watch it if you like restaurant shows. They do a really good job of telling that story. Another like little relationship I didn't really talk. I mentioned it was the relationship between Sydney and Tina. I talked about it a little bit, but the way they resolved it was so cool. Was that Sydney asked Tina to make some mashed potatoes or something. And she was like, "Hey, season." I forget. She asked her to season the sauce or something. Like, season one part of it. Don't worry about the potatoes. And it was like a sauce. But what ended up happening was Tina actually boiled the sauce over, and she overcooked it, and she had to throw it away. And what was really cool was Sydney had already made a backup one, so she put it on the stove, seasoned it, and had it going for Tina. And Tina was like, when she came back, she was like, "You did this? Why you do this?" And then I forget exactly what Sydney said, but Sydney was like, "I'm about work, like, I'm about business. Don't fucking play with me," or something like that. I forget exactly what Sydney said, but it was very, very dope. And it earned Tina's respect. Tina was like, okay, she's trying to help me. Because she was trying to teach her and show her stuff, and like, make her more efficient too. Like, not trying to tell her how to cook, but just make her more efficient. Tina wasn't really feeling it, because she thought, oh, she's coming in as the sous chef, she's gonna boss me around, and woo woo woo. But that's not the thing. Sydney was trying to teach, pass on whatever she learned to other people. It was really cool, because then Tina started dressing more like Sydney. She had on like the white apron, the white coat, the white apron. It was really cool. So I like their relationship too. But I really enjoyed The Bear. I love season 1. I cannot wait for season 2. Can't wait. Also, it's a really good show based in Chicago. Like, I wish you saw like some other little Chicago landmarks. But just seeing the pink line and like the green line, and just because Sydney actually takes the train at the Clinton stop, which I was like, yep. I don't take the Clinton stop all the time, but I pass it constantly. Like, yep, we're there. So that's my view of that's kind of me talking about The Bear. I guess my discussion review Really loved it. Like there was just some little things, like little nitpicky things about it, but it was so great. It's easily one of my favorite shows of 2022, and I can't wait for more. So thank you so much for checking out this brand new episode of the Nerd Barbershop Podcast. I greatly appreciate it. Like, share, comment on YouTube, subscribe, hit me up on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Let me know what you think of the podcast. Let me know if you watched The Bear, because I personally really, really enjoyed it, and I just can't wait for more. So, all in forever, slicing, dicing, gaming. Not just a motto, it's a lifestyle. See you in the next podcast. Later.